Hey dudes and dudettes, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast, a podcast chock full of everything that is nostalgic about the 80s, 90s, and more, where we journey back in time to talk with our favorite celebrities about our VHS and TV dinner days. This episode, we're jumping into the mainframe to talk with the man behind many voices and characters from our favorite TV and movies. So I'd like to welcome Michael Benyaer to the show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. I appreciate it. Yeah.
You know, you got to rapid fire sometimes.
I didn't know I was there for your TV dinners, but that's cool.
Hey, sometimes ReBoot was on any later in the day, so you're rocking it out. So of course, had to get those TV dinners in. But yeah, so again, thanks for taking the time. Just kind of jumping right into it. You've been in the business for a while. You've been doing lots of voice acting work. You've done some character work and just been in appearances and so many things. But it looks like you got started at a super young age at 9 years old. So
that is. I'm glad you brought that up. That was not my first credit. My first credit was an episode of 21 Jump Street when I was about 17. That show, which is, I think it's Gundam Wing. Is that what it is?
I think so.
It was originally animated in 79, and then I dubbed it in 93, I guess. So yeah, I didn't start that early, but thank you.
Hey, it's all right. Well, I mean, getting started. I mean, even regardless, starting. You're about under 18 when you're in Jump Street.
Yes, I was 17. Yeah.
So yeah. So what was the influence to get going? Just in the business in general. Were you always like movies or certain things about it?
I always wanted to act. I'd always wanted to do voices and acting shows. And Vancouver, Canada, at the time, they started filming shows there, and they did the pilot of 21 Jump Street in my high school. I was an extra. And I got an agent soon after that, and I got my first speaking part was on 21 Jump Street. And soon after that, maybe a couple months later, I got my first voiceover job. I was the voice of Ken for Barbie and Ken.
Very, very cool. So did you dress up as Ken when you went into the voice acting work, or you just like, PJs all around?
I did not dress up like Ken, although that was the cartoon at the time was Barbie and the Rockers when Ken was a rock star. They were all rock stars, yeah.
Well, cool. So, I see that you also have your, MFA from UCLA and law degree. So when you're playing those types of characters, legal and medical, you're actually kind of getting paid to play those characters. How do you feel about that? I
feel good getting paid acting anything. But the MFA was in film, and the law degree, of course, is in law. I played a lawyer a couple times, but I'd love to do it more. And my mother would say, "Why don't you just be a lawyer?" So I don't know. Being a lawyer on TV is maybe close enough. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I mean it should make mom proud. You're like, Mom, I got the degree. I'm also playing it, so it's like a 2-for-1. So mom should be extra happy at that point.
You should be.
So like you said, you've done a variety of characters. In your first one, what was the process of landing your first voiceover gig? Was this something you just got called from your agent, or did you go out and like seek some work like that?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was a new industry in Vancouver. There were not a lot of people who were with agents, and I wanted to do it. They sent me for the audition, and I got the part. I think I auditioned for several roles in that show, and I thought I was very versatile at the age of 17 or 18, whatever, 17. And in the end, they said, just do your voice. And then with my voice, I booked the part of Ken. So that was cool.
Very nice, very nice. Well, first exposure to the voice acting, and then so what was the first on-screen then that you said it was?
I was just a teenager on a show called 21 Jump Street. If the listeners out there remember it or know it, it was a show about
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, yeah, he was in the scene with me, and undercover cops in high school. And then over the years, I did a couple other episodes of 21 Jump Street as different characters. Those are the days where people could, do shows more than once. But now with the internet, people remember very well. They can Google it like yourself. They can go onto the IMDb and say, you were on this episode. So these are the days where I did that show three times. I did MacGyver a couple times. Yeah, those are the days where you could do more than one episode as different people.
Oh yeah, well, people who are of a certain age don't let Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill convince you that they're only 21 Jump Street. There was an original.
That's right.
And it was pretty awesome. I was a fairly young kid when it came out, when it was going on, but of course it was on the lineup. I watched it with my older sister, so definitely had my fair share of the 21 Jump Street pre Johnny Depp, pre Michael Benyaer blow up, of course, to the next thing that came out for me, most recognizable for me. Of course, he had multiple roles in between the time, but the first big one for me was ReBoot.
I come from the net, through systems, peoples, and cities, to this place, mainframe. My format, Guardian, to mend and defend. To defend my newfound friends, their hopes and dreams. To defend them from their enemies. They say the user lives outside the net and inputs games for pleasure. No one knows for sure, but I intend to find out. ReBoot!
You know, the show, the Canadian show out there. Of course, every Saturday morning I was watching that, and it was just crazy that I didn't know at the time that it was a Canadian show being in the lineup with all these other, you know, American shows and maybe even Japanese shows as well. So it was a nice, I guess, cultural influence from our neighbors up north. So what was it like, the experience working on that show, especially a different type of animation? It was that 3D animation that not very many shows were doing or experimenting with at that time.
Yeah, you asked a lot of good things right now. I mean, ReBoot was the first fully CGI animated series. I believe we beat Toy Story to the screens by about 6 months. And even though it was produced in Vancouver, the creators were British, 3 British guys who had been known for a lot of their CGI work on the music videos, especially Dire Straits' Money for Nothing, and then they did Def Leppard, Get Rocked. So, which is, you can see kind of an early version of Enzo, who was a character on ReBoot in that. He was the kid running around. And Canada was very known for animation even before ReBoot, because the co-production deals between Canada and the United States, it was easier to do that. And then when we did ReBoot, I think they really wanted, they knew they would have a co-producer in ABC in the United States, so they really wanted it to sound American, for me to sound American, all the people to sound American. So, you know, I had done some other shows before that where I was doing American shows, Barbie and Ken and G.I. Joe at the time.
I was going to say, you rocked out some G.I. Joe, American Hero.
A real American hero. And then also there was a show called Exo Squad, which I think I had started just before that. So, you know, ReBoot took a long time to do because it was a new technology, like you're saying. So during that time, I went on vacation to LA and I got, quote, discovered and did the voice of Hadji on the reboot of Jonny Quest. So I got that in the States. So then at that time, and I think it was about 94, 95, I was flying back and forth between Los Angeles and Vancouver doing, oh, and I was doing another show for Deke at the time called The Hurricanes, where I was about a soccer team, and I was playing a couple of characters there. So
you were pretty busy just in this middle of time. You were just bouncing back and forth.
Early 20s, yeah. So, you know, ReBoot was great, and then it finally aired, and it became a huge hit in Canada because it aired on a channel in Canada called YTV, which was basically the youth television channel, and they aired the show, I think, 3 times a day, every day. So it became very, very popular in Canada. In the States, it was only on once a week, and then I think after the second season, it wasn't even on ABC anymore. So it was weird because in Canada, it was really a phenomenon, I guess. So when now, today, I've done conventions in the last few years where people like come up to me and they want my autograph and they want to talk about ReBoot. So it's interesting to me that you're in the States and you're still as much of a fan as some of these people in Canada.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it was on the Y channel, which I guess is the equivalent to
Cartoon Network or whatever.
Yeah, Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon out here.
It'd be more like Nickelodeon.
Yeah, or Channel 4, is it out in the UK? Is that more the I guess more directed toward the younger squad? But yeah, no, it wasn't necessarily. It was on like the ABC or NBC Saturday morning cartoon lineup out here in the States. So it was definitely something that, you know, it was in the heydays. It's like, you know, from like, well, I forgot what year. So there's going like 94 91 or 94 did it start again?
ReBoot started, I think, about 95.
Yeah, so this is like still in the heyday of Saturday morning cartoons, but of course the advancement with reboots, the type of 3D animation, and so yeah, it was something that like it was just brand new to us because we've been watching like Looney Tunes, like the old school Looney Tunes, and then some of the newer stuff that was coming out, but we hadn't seen anything like ReBoot before. So like that was like I was as a kid, for me, I was enamored, and we didn't have the internet, so we didn't know that all of our other friends across the country were just as enamored. So growing up, I would see it sometimes on a random channel. I'd watch it, or even now you can check it online. Or I think there's got to be at least there's definitely DVDs and things like that you can buy now. But it definitely has its following. So that was my next question. Was like you said a couple of years ago when you started going to conventions, like how overwhelming. Like you guys had no idea, like even through the running of the show or a little after.
I had an idea that it was popular intellectually, right? Like I knew this. But I've said this in several interviews, which is when Kiefer Sutherland walks down the street, people go, I love Jack Bauer, I love 24. When I walk down the street, nobody has any idea that I voiced this character because I'm anonymous. So when they go, Michael Benyaer is going to be here, who did the voice of Bob on ReBoot, people come up to me one after another and they say, oh my God, I love the show, and could you autograph this? And people show me tattoos of the show, and I just was kind of blown away. And then I think it was the first convention that I went to. I was signing books for a guy named Jim Sue, who did a book, the artwork of ReBoot. And then they wanted me to do a panel, and I walked with the person who was leading me to the panel hall, and there was about, I don't know, 150, 200 people lined up. I said, well, what are they waiting for? And he goes, they're waiting for you. I said, what? And I went into the room, and it was a room filled with, I don't know, 200 people, 300 people.
How many Bobs were there dressed up?
Well, they weren't dressed at that one, but there's been other conventions where they dress as Bob, and that was cool. But then I realized the people outside weren't let in. That was the overflow.
Oh,
so
even more people were there.
I was really touched, and I don't know how well you remember the show, but I think that was a convention or one of the conventions. I asked them if they remembered the opening monologue of the show, which I had voiced, and they did, and unrehearsed, all these hundreds of people in unison recited this opening monologue to me, I come from the net. So it was very overwhelming, very emotional, overwhelming to really see it put into reality, this kind of thing I knew intellectually.
Yeah, like you said, it's something I've talked to, some other celebrities who, in the same vein as you, like, during the show's run, they kind of have a good instance, like, oh, this probably got a good, a good run with the kids, or it's hitting the right spots, but they had no idea until years later how much of an impact the show had, or at least how much it really influenced, or just, people just really enjoyed it all together, and then also have the appreciation. So especially when you go to conventions now, like you said, you get people lined up around the corner just to come see you guys, which is awesome. I'm glad that you guys are getting the recognition that you deserve, because of course it's a Canadian show, so in America they don't really tout that they're Canadian shows. You kind of have to pay attention to the names, or even like the production of where it's at. I mean, as a kid, you're not really paying attention to that stuff. So yeah, it's like I said, growing up and now seeing that you guys are getting the attention you deserve, it really is, it is awesome. So especially for ReBoot, but you've done way more things than just ReBoot. Another character you had mentioned earlier, as you were Hadji in the reboot of the Real Adventures of Jonny Quest. So how important was it for you playing a character like that, to portray him maybe a little bit differently from the previous show, or just like create your own character? Did you have any say in that, or were you directed a certain way?
This is a great question. When I went to Los Angeles on a vacation, I ended up going for dinner with some friends, and their agent, who was a literary agent, also had actors, started talking to me, looking at me, heard that I did voiceover. She said, you'd be great for this, redoing this classic show. And she couldn't remember what it was, or what, and I found out that it was Jonny Quest. And I said, well, the character is from India. And she's like, oh, is your heritage Indian? And I said, no. But I mean, my parents were from, Middle East. So I said, I can do the accent, but I know the show. And the character, as I recall, was about 7 years old. I said, I'm good, but I don't know if I could sound 7 years old. And she goes, no, the character is now 17. So I wanted to audition, and I was wanting to know what the original show was about. And these are the days before, YouTube and all this. I had to go and get a copy of the show, and it wasn't easy to find. And I ended up having to buy a VHS copy of the classic show.
I was gonna say you probably had to go to a public library for something like that.
That would have been a smart idea. I don't think they even had one.
Oh man.
VHS. This is about 94. And I watched the original show, which I'd seen years earlier as a kid. And the accent that the voice of Hadji had really wasn't very accurate to India. It was kind of a generic ethnic kid. Maybe the guy was Latino who did it. I wasn't sure.
It was a Hollywood accent, basically.
I don't even know what it was. but I was very confident that I could do something more accurate, and called around to people that I knew to get me an audition while I was in LA. And I was referred to a big agency. I was referred by a woman named Andrea Romano, who was the director of ReBoot, voiceover director, and she was the voice director of Tiny Toons and Batman, and she was the big wig at Warner Brothers Animation. So they referred me to a big agent at ICM, and they got me the audition, and it got me my green card in the United States, and that's what brought me to Los Angeles. Yeah, I wanted to be authentic, and when the guy who was producing the show at the time, Peter Lawrence, who had grown up in Tanzania, and he knew a lot of people who were of Indian heritage, and he says that I was doing kind of a more authentic accent than a lot of people were doing, the quote, Apu accent, is what he was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a young Gandhi. I kind of did him with kind of a colonial English influence. So that's what I wanted to do, make it a little more dignified than I think a lot of people wanted to do.
Well, cool. Yeah, and it comes off. I mean, I watched the show a little bit growing up, but it wasn't anything I was heavily into. But going back and watching the clips and even comparing the two, yeah, it definitely the voice is it sounds a little more authentic, and looks like they took a little more respect in regards to portraying the character a certain way. So yeah, I just wanted to see how you approached it, or if you had the opportunity to approach it differently, especially at a young age, especially in your earlier in career, if you have that kind of influence, especially when you're voice acting. Do you kind of get that influence, or once you receive the material, that's basically what you're saying?
I'm sorry, you're saying once I get the material?
Yeah. I guess even at any point during voice acting, do you have influence on the material, or is it just like you get it and you say it?
No. I mean, they write the script, and I think we might have done some improvisational stuff on that, and I remember ReBoot, we got to do some joking around, but usually you pretty much stick to what's written.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was something that, like you said,
I did other shows too. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, things just come out of what you're doing in the studio sometimes. I mean, ReBoot, there were some of the catchphrases that kind of caught on from that, and then I did Robot Chicken. A lot of that was done with kind of like, having fun in the studio.
Do you get a lot of people saying, will you just voicemail me, warning, incoming game?
Right. That's not me. That was Kathleen Barr.
Yeah.
Who thought she did something else. But I do know that in the 90s, a lot of people did make their computers open with my recording of ReBoot. So I don't know.
That's funny, and that's another thing too, kind of going on. Like after ReBoot, you did, or ever since, you've done a lot of voiceover for video games. So yes. Do you play video games a lot on your own, or are you a big gamer? What's the deal there?
I wish I was. No.
Yeah.
I kind of lost interest back in the 80s. I mean, I love a lot of the classic games. I just feel like you got to learn a whole new language every time you do these games.
The way it is now, yes, you kind of have to. And I even myself, who I like to call myself a gamer, it's probably more of an actual mild casual gamer compared to some people. But this kind of leads, I was going to ask, if do you ever hear yourself in a video game, does it sound weird? Or do you have friends who play games and they call you I just heard you be this character in this game. It's just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, people don't usually know, but my uncle's kids, they're late teens now, but when they were younger, I would get them a lot of the games. They would send them to me. I think there was one Uncharted I was in, and then what was the other one? What was the one?
We had a couple Assassin's Creed and
Assassin's Creed. So I got them that one. I had a big part in that, and they took out of the fact that I was in that.
You had so many on the credits. I can see where it's hard to keep track.
Yeah. Because you do it for a couple days or whatever, and then
it's a quick job.
And it takes on a life of its own. Yeah.
You gave it to your what was it, your niece and nephews, and they just enjoy it?
They're my cousins,
Cousins.
but they were like my nephews. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, they say, like you said, they at least get to hear you. If even when you're not there, you can say that you've always been there for them somehow, some way.
So I'm with them when they're playing the game.
Exactly. So kind of going on to some other things you've done in the mid 2000s. You got to work with Seth Green and those guys at Robot Chicken on some episodes. Was it the Who Poop Last? I think was you're the host of that guy, and then some other characters as well. What was that experience like? Were you a fan of the show too beforehand?
Well, Seth and I were friendly at the time. He was dating a good friend of mine at the time, and at that time he wanted to do some shorts for the internet for a Sony Screen Blast. I think it was their website at the time, and it was called Sweet J Presents, and it was kind of Saturday Night Live with action figures. So we did that, and they weren't able to really get a lot of audience on the internet at the time. So they sold the idea to Cartoon Network, and then that is what became Robot Chicken. So then when they sold it, they couldn't use the old versions because it was owned by Sony, so they had to redo a lot of the sketches that we had done originally, and I got to do it again.
Well, nice. Were you part of any of the writing material, or just come into voice again?
No, I wasn't, but I knew a lot of the guys who wrote because they've been around. One guy I went to college with at UCLA, and they were friends with Seth, and yeah, it was nice to see it kind of take on a life, because it had been just something for him to do for fun originally.
Yeah, and kind of growing up, I always, a fan of Seth's material as well. I always kind of kept up with him, and I always knew that he was kind of an action figure, guy growing up. And so to see this show evolve, like I think I was in the middle of college when the show really got going. So this was like a late night, come home from the bar, Robot Chicken's on. We'll watch 2 15-minute episodes, finish our food or whatever. It was just a pure entertainment. And like my friends kind of grew out of it. Me, if you see in the background, I got action figures on my shelves and stuff. So like watching that stuff, like I love watching like characters or action figures I actually had interact in different ways.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that was the point of it, right? Which was to give, comedy references to the generation that grew up with that stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, some of those scenarios are a little too real, but they'll take it. We'll take it. It was a good time. And then some other things that you've done, moving away from the voice acting stuff, you were entertaining the lunch crowds, the stay-at-home moms, and the unemployed with Days of Our Lives as Dr. Chaika or Chica? How do you?
Dr. Chaika, that's right.
Dr. Chaika. So yes, my mom. Of course, I'm a fan of Days of Our Lives. I used to watch Days of Our Lives. My mom, lunchtime growing up. So. Nothing against it at all. I definitely enjoyed the show. So it was ahead its time in my life. So what was it like acting in a soap opera compared to voice acting or just any other acting? Is it a different preparation, just kind of all around because it's a different type of acting, or what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, it is a different preparation. With voiceover acting, you just go in and you read the script. Hopefully you've read it once before and made some notes or some ideas. But with the soap opera, I didn't realize that it was done with so little rehearsal time.
Exactly.
And, I started for maybe a few episodes, and they liked what I was doing, and they kept me on. I think I did almost 40 episodes over a few months. So it's very stressful. And I want to say people don't give soap opera actors the credit they deserve, because it is the hardest. They're doing many, many pages of dialogue a day, with almost no rehearsal. Sometimes they film you rehearsing it or doing kind of the, your thoughts of what it is. And they go, good, we're moving on. And I think that the soap opera actors are doing the hardest job, because it's a lot of dialogue, which is somewhat repetitive, and, not a lot of preparation or rehearsal time. So what we're watching on those shows is almost sometimes the first or second time they're doing it together, and it's semi-improvised. And it looks very natural. So, yeah, soap opera acting is not voice acting or regular film and TV acting.
Yeah, even like growing up, people always like to give soap operas a hard time, but like you said, it's a completely different machine in regards to churning out material. The quality of material. Of course, they want to make sure it's as quality as possible, but if it's not, it sounds like they're just ready to move on and make sure that the train keeps moving, because they got to get that episode out. Do they shoot each episode? Is it like weekly, daily? How does that go?
I think they were doing it daily, And I mean, for when I was there, this is a couple of years ago now, I think that they had banked the episodes almost 6 months in advance. So what we're seeing has been done months in advance.
But they got to keep up with that bank, so they got to keep churning them out as the episodes are being aired.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so no, like I said, people like to give it a hard time, but it's a different machine, and of course, it's a different demographic, of course, when it's shown, only at the 12 o'clock hour. So of course, they're going after a certain demographic. You got to get that material out. So I just want to see, what the different preparations and things like that were. Some of the more recent things that you've done as well, that you were the voice of the almighty Olmec from the recent Legends of the Hidden Temple on Nickelodeon, the recent movie. Were you you were probably a little older at the time, but did you ever watch a show in the 90s?
I didn't know the show, and sorry, I don't know if there's some confusion. I ended up playing the on-camera version of Olmec in the movie.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I didn't. Spoilers. I didn't watch the movie. I'm sorry.
Got the guy who did the voice originally to reprise his role. So even though when we filmed, I was doing the voice, they got him to come back and do it.
Well, cool. And then did they have the host at all in there?
Yeah, he did it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so were you a fan of the show growing up? Did you even know about it?
I didn't know anything about the movie. When I was auditioning for the film, my buddy said, "You don't know this?" And he goes, "No, this is Olmec. This guy was a big show," and he explained to me what it was. So that was cool to know in advance. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, then you'll probably be hit up in years to come thinking the same thing, or if you haven't watched and thinking the same thing, just people who are going to be out on Halloween are probably going to try to hit you up while they're wearing their Silver Monkeys competitive shirts from the 90s TV show. So try not to be too confused when that happens. So yeah, just kind of moving on, like the last couple of things that we'll go over. You recently played the Warlord in the Deadpool hit. It was a kind of a surprise hit for everybody. You actually got a pretty cool part right at the beginning of the movie. So what was it like? Did you get to work with Tim Miller? Was that like a second unit type thing, or what was that whole experience like?
Oh, that's a good question. The scene was done as a reshoot. I guess they had filmed the movie, and they wanted to add a scene to explain to the audience who the villain character is. Francis in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my scene is done to introduce that he's badder than a bad guy, So I'm playing this Serbian warlord as it's in the script, and I come out of the helicopter and I want my weapons or whatever, and he uses his mutant powers to threaten me. So it was done after the majority of the film had been shot, and Tim Miller was directing it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what was it like working with it? I'm sure Ryan Reynolds.
I was there for one day,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a really cool guy. He knew friends of mine in Los Angeles because they worked in the visual effects business. And Tim had not directed a movie before, but he had a very successful effects company called Blur, which is a CGI company. So he was a really cool guy. I saw him that day, and then not too long after, I saw him at the screening at the 20th Century Fox lot the night the movie opened, and it looked like it was going to do well, but I don't think any of us had any idea it would be that big.
Yeah, it blew up. I mean, it was a kind of a good cocktail of everything happening at the same time. People were wanting a little shift in their superhero movies, a little tone shift. Ryan Reynolds was like born to play basically Deadpool, and then just the way the release, the leaked footage, before the movie got produced, that kind of really blew everybody's hype up at that point too.
Yep.
So I think it was a good cocktail, but like I said, with you having the opportunity, that's awesome. Just kind of go into that more with taking those type of roles as like the warlord. Are you selective? Do you make sure that you're not taking them like back to back to back to back, so like stereotyped, or do you a job's a job, you'll take it?
I mean, there's a little. It's between there's a job, it's a job, I'll take it, and being stereotyped. I mean, I wanted to do the film. It had been shot already. I said to my agent, I said, I really think that this could be something. I think I could do something. I had a feeling it would be a hit. I didn't think it would be as big a hit as it was. And it was a different role for me. I was playing Serbian. I'm not always doing that kind of thing. So I wanted to do that. And I like to try and do different things. That's why I'm in acting. I don't want to play the same thing over and over again. Yeah.
Well, good.
But yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So you can keep the door open for more diverse roles and things like that for yourself, of course. So just kind of leading into, what are some other things you have going on, plan your next project or current projects? I see that you've been in some episodes of Prison Break. Is that right?
yeah. I was in the new Prison Break. It's airing now. I did the first few episodes. There's a movie I did a couple of years ago. It's finally going to get released, I believe, late August. It's with Kate Upton and Alex Daddario, two girls who go on a vacation together, and they get stuck in St. Louis on a layover. The movie's called The Layover, and they end up falling for the same guy and competing for the same guy. I'm not the guy.
I was gonna say, are you that lucky guy?
No, I'm another guy who is after Kate Upton in the movie, who she wants nothing to do with, and I'm a very funny kind of a cheesy kind of guy trying to go out with her, and she wants nothing to do with me.
Well, those are two very lovely ladies. I'm pretty jealous you get to work with. You already done, or you're getting ready to, is that you said?
Yeah, we did that about 2 years ago, but it's
Okay.
fun. I know. Yeah.
So it's looking for a release here pretty soon then.
Yeah, I think it's August 28th, something like that. Yeah.
All right. So that's going to be out on some screens, major release or some screens?
I think it's going to be some screens, and I think it's going to be on a VOD. I'm not quite sure, but I mean, if you look it up, they'll tell you.
The Layover. We'll have to keep an eye out for that come August.
And it was directed by William H. Macy, the actor.
Oh, from Shameless. Good old Frank.
I know him from Fargo. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and in the film is a lot of other really funny people: Molly Shannon, Cal Penn. What's his name?
That is a solid cast.
No, it is a solid cast. So yeah, what's his name?
Is that one that got filmed up in Vancouver?
Vancouver, yeah. Cordry. Rob Cordry.
Is it Rob Cordry? Yeah.
In it. It's funny. It's a funny movie.
Yeah, no, that actually really sounds like you guys have a solid cast there, and with the premise, I'm eager to see what this is all about. So August in the 20th, 21st, 28th,
late August, I think.
Late August. We'll keep an eye out for late August.
In the vein of like Bridesmaids, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So I'll have to give that a shot. It sounds pretty interesting. Well, then, other than that, where can people find you on the internet if they want to follow you or follow your updates and projects and things like that?
I am on Instagram with my name. I'm on Twitter with my name, and I even have a Facebook fan page. So you can get me at all the hot spots, and you just type in my name, Michael Benyaer, Michael Benyaer.
Perfect. And then any Comic-Cons or anything you're going to be hitting up anytime soon? There's a Denver one if you're hitting up the Denver one.
You know what? I should look into that because it's I do like doing it, but I always forget about that, how much I like doing it. To meet the fans.
It's hard. You forget about the 150 people lined outside ready to just come.
But I forget how much I like doing it.
It's understandable. Well, you're a busy guy. It's hard. It's to line up those things. It's not easy just to shoot a flight over to some city and chill out for the weekend. So yeah, it takes some planning. But if you ever think about Denver, this guy will be in that line waiting to get there. Denver.
All right.
Alrighty. So yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time. Everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast. For more episodes, movie news, and nostalgia, please subscribe, like, and follow the podcast on iTunes, Twitter, SoundCloud, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So thanks, and be excellent to each other.